My name is Jane Trigere. I'm the owner of the Deerfield Arts Bank. I welcome you all. Many of you I've seen before and some I haven't before. So I hope that you get an opportunity to look at this exhibit that we just opened yesterday. I'm very, very pleased and proud of it. It's a dream come true. It's right out of my imagination. A passion for chairs that I cannot quite explain, except that I've been collecting things about chairs for years, for no apparent reason. And they've collected and collected until somehow they just sort of start bubbling to the surface. And I noticed that I have a huge amount of studio portraits of children from 100 years ago. And everybody thinks, why? It's the chairs. The chairs in the studio portraits are pretty sensational. The kids might be, but they're not mine, and I don't care that much about them. But the chairs I really care about. And I think I need a bumper sticker that says, I break for chairs. Because I've been collecting chairs that I see on the side of the road for years. And sometimes I think, nah, I'm not going to take that one. And my husband says, it's free. Yeah. So I go back to look again, and out of that came those two sides of this rocker, which I think is a Thonet design. And before the exhibit was up, I just had it up for pleasure, and people said, what is that? I'm thinking, isn't that funny? They don't know what it is. And once you put the word chair outside the building, chair dreams, interpreted, everybody understands that that's the side of the rocker. And there are, of course, two. But they look quite different because you can hang them differently. And out of those children's portraits came an idea to reach out to community and say, bring me your favorite chair, and we'll photograph you, and we'll create a photomontage. And that's what this group above the coffee represents. And it made the front page of the Recorder today. Some of you might have noticed that. And it made a lot of community people really happy. They didn't really come in to see the exhibit necessarily. They came in to see this particular piece, and that's fine. I like to watch what people get stuck looking at, and it's different for everybody. And what you have here are 30 artists, 48 pieces, and they're all extremely different from each other. And some of them you may wonder about, and others you might just walk by and not find interesting. That's the pleasure of it. I even got, do you know Annie's Garden Shop? Annie sent me a story about chairs. So I put it together. It's here, and it says, sit here and read this story. And at the opening on Sunday, plenty of people sat there and read through the story. So the exhibit, we also have art classes beginning in October, November, and this is what that flyer looks like. And if you want to know anything about these pictures beyond just looking and enjoying, sometimes that's just enough. But if you want to know more, like who did it, what it's made out of, and what they want, what the price is, then it's this thing that's folded in 3. And that'll be over there by the guest book. As part of this exhibit, I knew that I wanted some other events that are connected, and something for everyone. So we have a concerto planned. We're not quite sure how it's going to come out because we've gotten some warnings that we have to be careful about playing music, so we have to figure this one out. But the penultimate one is chair massage, of course. So we have an evening of chair massage, and you'll see it on the flyer out there. And then the one before that is a demonstration of caning and weaving of chair seats, and that'll be, I think, next Sunday. And today we have my friend Arnold Friedman, and I'm very honored to be your friend. I didn't know quite how famous you were until I announced that he was speaking at the opening, and people said, how did you get Arnold Friedman to speak? And suddenly I was very impressed with myself. Arnold Friedman was born in Germany, and he came to the United States in 1947. He received his BFA and MS from Pratt Institute in New York, and a PhD from Union Institute and University, Union Institute and University in Cincinnati. He's taught 17 years at the Pratt Institute and 22 years at UMass here in Amherst. And in that program, in that institution, he started the professional design program there. And that particular program is now accredited for Masters in Architecture. He's published 4 books and some 60 articles on design. And I know Arnold. I didn't know anything really about that until I got to know him. But when I first met him, I got to know him because he has the largest collection of balance toys in the world. Right?
Yeah.
And he just recently gave half of it away, and he still has the largest collection of balance toys in the world. Either that's phenomenal or no one else in the world collects balance toys. I'm not sure.
That's the reason.
It's possible, right? Right. The only thing he really wanted me to make sure I said is that he's a reasonably good tennis player. And he and his wife, Susie, who is there, have just celebrated their 65th wedding anniversary. Oh, and there will be a Q&A afterwards.
Okay.
And there's the coffee, the cookies, and the whatever.
Thank you very much.
Oh, excuse
Jane.
me.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'd like to introduce the photographer from Frontier Community Access Television, right around the corner here, FCAT, and this is Lacey Arnold, and she'll be filming. If you don't want to be in the film, stay out of her way.
If you want cookies or coffee, you can walk in front. It's fine.
Not while I talk.
Not while we talk.
Thank you very much,
Wait,
Jane. For
Lacey, when do I turn off the lights?
Whenever you like.
well, keep them on for a minute until I show the slides.
Not
Okay.
sure. It'll be in the schedule.
I am delighted. Thank you for the introduction. What Jane has done here is quite remarkable. I had not been here before, and the amount of chair-related art and paintings that she collected is just wonderful. And I hope you all saw her earrings, which are 2 chairs hanging down from her ears. I'm very happy to be here, and if I may borrow a saying, I think it was George Burns, at my age, I'm happy to be anywhere. I would like to talk about chairs, and before I show slides, and I think the announcement said that these are going to be chairs from mid-century, that's the middle of last century, and I brought an appropriate device, a slide projector. The younger people probably never saw anything like that, and it's far more reliable than digital computers that usually go around. I want to talk about chairs because chairs are extremely important in the world of design. First of all, most designs that we do as designers or architects, we are trying to solve a problem. Well, the problem of a chair has been solved about several thousand years ago. The Egyptians had chairs which had a seat and a back and 4 legs. So everything that we have done since is essentially a design variation, but the basic problem had been solved. Chairs are very important. Designers and architects, it's a little bit like if you are an English professor, you have to write a book. If you are in the field of design or architecture, you have to design a chair. And the chairs that I'm going to talk about are actually named chairs. They are named by the designer, which is something which has not happened in recent time. So it isn't just that I'm old-fashioned and go back to the 1950s, but I'm not aware of any chairs which have been designed in recent years which have a name like an Eames chair or a Saarinen chair, and I'll get to that in a minute. Uh, a lot of the design of chairs is predicated on the materials.
I'm going to turn off the light because
Okay.
I want to sit and watch.
Oh, all right, fine. The materials are very important. The appropriateness of material will very often decide whether a chair can be created or not. Some people who have tried to make chairs out of wood, which really should be wrought iron, doesn't work. Chairs that are in plastic, plastic is one of the newest materials, and that is a material we did not have before. But essentially, chairs continue to be mostly wood and metal, and those are the traditional materials that we've had for many, many years. Chairs are also an expression of our culture. Those of you who have seen a chair like a Louis XIV chair, very elaborately carved, very elegant, would not picture, or at least I would not picture, a young man with jeans and t-shirt sitting in it. And I don't think that if you have seen a chair like a sling chair, that you would consider it appropriate for a woman from the court of Louis XIV with elaborate dresses and hoops, because it just wouldn't work. So chairs are very much a reflection of our culture. Chairs are also status symbols. I will show you an example of a chair which most of you have seen. A chair designed by Mies van der Rohe in 1929, which is a beautiful piece of design, but an exceedingly uncomfortable chair, and I'll get back to that in a minute. But no self-respecting banker or lawyer could have an office without one of these chairs in the waiting room. And finally, I was going to say something else. Yeah, finally, chairs very often are conceived as works of art. We have some examples here, but there are some very famous chairs in the history of furniture design. I don't have an example here, but many of you have heard of Charles Rennie Mackintosh, the Scottish designer, who has designed a chair which has a back about that high, and which clearly is conceived as a work of art rather than a chair. All right, let me get to the slides. And if you don't mind, I will sit. Now, the first chair is a chair by Frank Lloyd Wright, and in spite of the fact that Frank Lloyd Wright was one of the greatest designers of the last century, he was terrible when it came to furniture. This chair is not only ugly, it is also uncomfortable, but I'm using that as an example that even the most creative people have not always mastered the design of a chair. This chair was designed in 1948 by Charles Eames and Eero Saarinen together as a submission for a competition sponsored in 1948 by the Museum of Modern Art. It's very significant because the shell of the chair is plastic, a material that it was at that time very new, and it would not have been possible to create that kind of chair, that shape, without a new material, in that case plastic. This is the one I mentioned by Mies van der Rohe. It's not a very good photograph, let me see. No, I don't have a better one. This was designed for the World's Fair in Barcelona in 1929. It was designed there were two chairs sitting side by side, and it was designed for the king and queen of Spain to sit there for about 15 minutes for the official opening of the pavilion. And that chair over the years has become a status symbol. I think the cost of the chair today is $4,800. So it is clearly not the kind of chair in which you want to curl up to read the Sunday paper. It's a chair to be looked at and to say, I'm impressive. I have on the upper left-hand corner, I can't get it any clearer, another example. These two are examples of chairs. These were designed by Marcel Breuer, and this is one of the earliest uses of metal in furniture. If you look at the shape of these two lower chairs, this is something that could not have been done in wood or in any of the traditional materials, but it was a new idea. The story goes that Marcel Breuer, very famous mid-century architect, was riding a bicycle, and as he was looking at the handlebar of the bicycle, the penny dropped, and he said, this is a material that can be shaped and bent, and he started a movement that created many other similar chairs. The three chairs, the sofa up there, the chair here, and the chairs were designed by Le Corbusier, who was probably the most influential architect in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s in Europe. And the chair in the upper right-hand corner is actually by Marcel Breuer. Many of you probably have been to the Whitney Museum in New York, which was one of the buildings he designed, and he also designed the campus center at UMass here. And as I said earlier, every architect tried to design at least one chair. This is the first chair designed by Eero Saarinen. Eero Saarinen would have been even more important. He was very important, but he died at the age of 54, and yet had an enormous amount of wonderful buildings and furniture to his credit. This was the very first chair. There are two companies in the United States, actually they are world famous, the distributors of furniture, Herman Miller and Knoll. This one is carried by Knoll Associates, and they actually commissioned Saarinen to design that chair. This chair is another example of work by Mies van der Rohe. The metal here is not the steel pipe of the other chairs, but is actually stainless steel. And it is an interesting chair because it has a lot of give, a lot of comfort when you sit down. I always worried when I saw very heavy people, will it stand up or not, but I don't think it ever collapsed. And because it bends down quite a bit, and it is another exceedingly expensive chair, but it is a dining chair and works better. I mentioned at the very beginning that the problem of designing a chair has been solved a long time ago, but there are so many different kinds: dining chairs, office chairs, lounge chairs, chairs for assembly, chairs that can be hooked up and reconfigured in different ways. So this particular chair was very successful as a dining chair. This is another chair by Le Corbusier. The arm is leather, stretched leather. The framework is steel tubing, and actually the seat is leather, in this case cowhide, hence the sort of design. Most of the time it was done in plain leather, but this one was designed with a pattern in the leather. These are two chairs, side chair and armchair, by Marcel Breuer. They are, at this point, ubiquitous. They were designed in the Bauhaus in around 1930, and yet these chairs are widely distributed and used today. You can see them every week in the New York Times magazine. They're advertised. So the fact that I'm talking essentially about mid-20th century design doesn't matter. Many of these chairs are timeless. There are a lot of young, exciting designers and architects around today. I don't think that I've become aware of any chair that has become famous through its name, like the Breuer chair, or the Mies van der Rohe chair, or the Corbusier chair, or the Saarinen chair. This is one of the most famous chairs by Charles Eames. Eames was primarily a furniture designer, unlike the other people I mentioned, who were all architects. Eames did a lot of furniture and was, in my opinion, the 20th century most important furniture designer. One of the things about this chair is not only design, but the quality and the thought process that went into it. This chair is every bit as comfortable as an overstuffed armchair. It has a certain amount of flexibility and give. The way the wooden shell is mounted on the base is with something like almost like a small shock absorber. So this chair is one that is another kind of status symbol. Almost every designer or every architect owns one. I used to own two. I only have one. And it's one of the other things I should mention is the quality of design. A lot of these chairs that I'm talking about are 20, 30, 40 years old. I have this chair, I think I bought it 45 years ago, and I use it every day, and it stands up, and I don't think there's any overstuffed Victorian chair or any other chair in upholstery that has the comfort and the lasting quality of this. That's no good. Terrible photograph, and I don't think I can. Let me try this. I can get it any brighter. No. This is another chair by Eames, and you can hardly see it, but the significance there is the process of molding plywood in a double curve is one that Eames experimented with, and this was the very first chair like that he did. Here is one by Eero Saarinen on the right hand side, a settee. The chair on the left is called a Womb chair, W-O-M-B chair, was designed around 1955, and it is still being carried and sold today, and it's extremely comfortable, but not quite as comfortable as the Eames chair because it has only padding. It does not have any soft upholstery. This is also a chair designed by Saarinen, and actually I copied this out of a Knoll catalog, and very often, I think I may have another example, the same chair was done on different legs.
Can we get it down a bit?
Not there, no.
Oh, that's sharper.
Yeah, that's
Can we
better.
get it down? Just take it out, the thing.
Okay?
Just take this out.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I guess. Yeah, I think this is the right photo. Okay. These are chairs designed by Harry Bertoia. I couldn't think of the name. Harry Bertoia was primarily a furniture designer, and all of these chairs, by the way, were designed around between 1925 in the Bauhaus and in the 1950s, like this chair. There's an interesting technology used here. This, unlike the Saarinen chair, which is plastic, this, as you can see, is done in metal, and the process of manufacturing it, at each intersection, it is welded together with something called spot welding, which works sort of like a sewing machine, and you obviously don't have a guy sitting there welding each joint by hand. It is programmed into a machine, and this is an interesting chair because A, it is used as an outdoor chair, it comes with upholstery, with partial upholstery, and it is a chair which is again still being sold today. You can see the back of it here, how it holds the upholstery. I bought two of these chairs, I think in 1955 when it came out, and I think I paid about $60 a chair. 20 years ago, I needed new upholstery, so you can order the upholstery which comes in a shell and snaps on, and at that time the new upholstery was $250 a piece. So God knows how much the chair costs today. Here's an example. This is a set table and chairs by Eero Saarinen. Some of you may have seen the TWA terminal at JFK, New York. Saarinen designed the gate to the west in St. Louis, and he was a wonderful designer, and you can see here that it is very sculptural. There's one problem with the chair. I said that most chairs have what they used to be in the 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, 4 legs. This is a pedestal base, and the problem was that when people sat in the chair and tried to get out, it got caught in the carpeting and they fell out of the chair, not very gracefully. So what Saarinen did subsequently is to design a swivel, so that when you sat you could swivel out instead of trying to push back. It's really a beautiful piece of sculpture. And by the way, that piece of sculpture on the left is one by Harry Bertoia, the guy who did the other metal furniture, who was a very good sculptor. A close-up of the Saarinen chair, and you can see the 2 cushions there which provide the softness, but not quite as soft as the Eames chair. Here's an example of a technology that actually I should have talked to, I don't have it in the right order. I'll get to Thorne in a minute. These chairs were designed by George Nelson, and they used a technology which was invented by the Thorne brothers. Let me go ahead. Here. Okay, most of you recognize that. That was done by the Thorne brothers in 1890 or thereabouts. And that was not a new material, but a new process. They used beech wood or oak. They put it in a steam chamber until it softened. They bend it, and then when it dried, it held the shape. So the design here is still inspired by Victorian design. However, the technology was extremely inventive, and has been used. This chair was designed by Joseph Hoffman in 1915, I believe. But let me go back to the others. These are by a Scandinavian designer by the name of Alvar Aalto, very famous, very important architect, who again, like all the others, has designed several chairs and used a technology that was invented by the Thorney brothers in 1890, using plywood and bending it. It's somewhat different from steam bending. The kind of plywood that was used in the chair in the upper right-hand corner is actually layers of veneer which is bent around a shape, and when the glue dries, then it becomes rigid. This is a chair used, not designed, but used by Le Corbusier for a big exhibition in Paris. It is usually referred to as the Corbusier chair. And one of the things that I need to point out here, that this and the Thorney chairs are put together with mechanical means instead of chemical. By chemical I mean that most of the chairs that we see are glued, which is chemical. When you look carefully, you can see that this is bolted together. There are screws in here, and the original Thorney chair, which the Thorney brothers designed in around 1890, has used that technology. I think, Judge, did you have an example of a Thorney chair here? Well, no, a real chair. Thank you. Great. You can actually see here that it is bolted together. These are bolts, these are screws, and it is remarkable that this way of putting the chair together provides a flexibility which gives it enormous strength. Sometimes this chair is referred to as the coffee house chair. In Vienna, in the coffee houses, they used to have these chairs and they let them sit out in the rain, and the worst that can happen that some of the screws have to be tightened, but they stand up forever. I have 4 of these original chairs which were made by Thorney around 1910, and I found them in an antique store, and I think I paid $2.50 a piece. But now the original ones have become very collectible, as they would say in the Antiques Roadshow. Another one, this is another Scandinavian designer by the name of Fritz Hansen, which uses a similar technique to the one that Alvar Aalto used, which is shaping the arms and the legs out of layers of veneer around a form, and then when the glue hardens, it becomes rigid. This chair no longer exists, but I was always fascinated by the technology of it. It is a foam chair, and the foam was put into a machine which had a vacuum and sucked all the air out of it until the chair was flat. And when it was put in a flat carton for shipping, and when it arrived, I had the pleasure once of doing that. I used a knife to cut open the carton, and very slowly, the chair takes this form and remains that way until you put in a vacuum and take the air out again. So this is an example of a chair based 100% on the material and the technology not on an arbitrary design. This is another Hansen chair, and I think, yeah, this is a chair by Hans Wegner, who actually had a background similar to mine. I didn't tell Jane to mention it, but I started out in my younger years as a cabinet maker. I was apprenticed to a cabinet maker, and Hans Wegner was a Scandinavian cabinet maker who designed these absolutely beautiful shapes, and they are still made in the factory. He died quite a few years ago, and they're almost works of art the way they're carved and put together. This is not a chair, but it is a table by Isamu Noguchi, a Japanese-American designer, and I like to show it because of the simplicity of form. Two pieces of wood and a piece of plate glass, and it's an exceedingly beautiful and elegant table. I mentioned the sling chair when I said that a lady from the court of Louis XIV would look out of place and she couldn't even get in. This chair was actually designed by two people. I only remember one, but his name was Hardoy. It was done around 1960, and it is probably the chair that has been copied and imitated more than any other chair in the history of mankind. You can get them folding chairs at Target, but the original was a very clever idea in as much as it used wrought iron in a sling, and it was really remarkably comfortable. And unlike all of the other named chairs that were designed around 1950, they were all expensive. This one was very inexpensive. The Eames, the first Eames plywood chair, was supposed to be low cost, and Eames had hoped to get it on the market for $50, but it never came on the market below $300. By today, I think it's about $3,500. So the fact that it has been copied does not take away from the initial quality. A chair by, one of the many chairs by Eames, where you see the actual reinforced fiberglass shell, and a very interesting variation. Instead of four legs, it has a metal structure which is basically like the truss of a bridge, and it is as strong as any steel or metal, and it is simply an exceedingly creative solution. And this chair came upholstered in just plain fiberglass with different legs. So one of the things that designers had to realize, to make a mold for a chair like that was about close to $100,000. So unless you had a sizable production and could use it over again, it was not feasible. I don't want to talk about that. I think that this was an English man by the name of Gray, and the interesting there was the stacking chair, and if you look on the side here, they can be hooked together so that you could either stack them or use them in an auditorium, and there are many, many of that type around today. I want to end by saying one thing about quality. Almost every chair that I showed has been copied ad infinitum. None of the copies have ever been as good as the originals. I'm reminded, I had a friend who was the chief designer for Hugh Stubbins' big architectural firm in Boston, and he was responsible for the interiors of the Federal Bank in Boston, yeah, Federal Reserve Bank in Boston. And amongst others, they specified one of the chairs that I had shown before, the bentwood chair designed by Joseph Hoffman. But it was a federal project, so it had to go out for a bid, and there were several bidders. My friend Phil was about 270 pounds, very tall guy, very heavy. And he wanted the original because he knew those were the best ones. But he was not allowed to do it without competitive bidding. So a number of manufacturers came in, and Phil used to say, "Do you mind if I sit on it?" They said, "No, of course not." And you know, with his 260 pounds, he plunked down at it and managed to break every single chair with the exception of the original, which stood the test of that. So the quality of manufacture as well as design, I hope that you will accept that and don't buy the many fakes that are on the market. There are so many substitute and copies, none of them are as good as the original. I think I'll stop at this point and I'll be happy to answer questions. Can we have the light? Yeah. Comments? Yeah.
I imagine the designers today are going to have to redesign these molded chairs to take care of obese America. You could get stuck in them.
I don't think they do. They're just like the airlines don't. I mean, the airline seats, if anything, get narrower, and God forbid if you sit next to somebody who's over 300 pounds, you're in trouble. And they would be in trouble with these too.
Right.
No, as far as I know, nobody has done that. I think overly obese people just have to suffer quietly.
I worked for 15 years at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and when it was built in 1965, all of the furnishings were done by the Eames. So every office had chairs. When I went there, the 6 months before I arrived, there had been in my office one of these wonderful Eames chairs, spectacular. But the costume department had been taken over by the curator of decorative arts, who decided that that chair needed to be in the collection, not in the office. So when I arrived, it was gone. It had gone into the permanent collection of the museum.
Well, all of these chairs are in every museum.
It's just that every single
designed
chair
yeah.
in the museum was an Eames chair.
Yeah.
Even the utilitarian ones and these wonderful molded wood ones. And when the people repaired them, they just drilled through the wood and just put screws in when the maintenance.
That's sacrilege.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
What about the, I think early American?
I'm sorry, let me turn this off. Yeah.
The Morris chair was considered quite avant-garde, the way it was structured.
It was,
Are
I'm
you
sorry, I have
familiar
trouble.
with the Morris chair, M-O-R-R?
Oh, Morris, that goes back much further.
Oh.
Morris chair was designed in England by Morris, which was the first sort of arts and crafts around 1880. The chairs that I showed are essentially Bauhaus, Breuer, Mies, Saarinen, Bertoya, mid-century, but Morris chair, that's a different story. That was the first adjustable chair, and it was a forerunner of the arts and crafts movement, but doesn't fit into my category. Yes?
There was a period where Swedish design and chairs and furniture were the rage, probably in the 60s.
Coming back now.
Now it's how do you explain that? What's the...
Well, I think that some of these chairs have a permanent quality that nobody else has equal. And I admit I went to school, I started in 1949, so my influence is all around that era and going back to the Bauhaus. And the fact that they are still being made and bought and people pay enormous prices for them, I think is a compliment to the original designers. The fact that now we are coming back and Swedish modern or Scandinavian design is popular, it's a matter of fashion, I guess. I've been very influenced by that design. I have 2 chairs which I designed and made long time ago. They still stand up. That are very much, I admit, influenced by Scandinavian design. But it is the kind of design, or was the kind of design, which I think is timeless. That's why it's coming back. Do you agree, or?
Yeah, yeah, but is there a cultural piece to it also? In other
No,
words,
no, I think it's fashion.
Just off,
Yeah. Yes.
You spoke of Charles Ames. Did he and Ray design the furniture together?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Ray Ames was as much part of the design process as Charles, but in a sexist society of that time, she never got any credit, and I think that he did more of the furniture. The office of Charles Ames, I don't know whether you ever saw it, they did a lot of graphics, they did exhibition design, and Ray Ames was very much a part of the team, but because she was a woman, she didn't get credit, and even I'm guilty, I should have mentioned her. Thank you for bringing that up.
But she did get credit toward the end of her life.
Yeah.
I knew her when I lived in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And she was really, finally at the end, she was
Yeah,
really
did.
revered.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I met Ames when we gave him an honorary degree at Pratt, but Ray wasn't invited.
and she really was there.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for putting me in place. Any other questions? Yeah.
What happened to your foam chair? Did it disintegrate?
No, they just don't make it anymore.
Okay, you
I don't know
said
why.
you
I thought it
had-
was terrific. I
Yeah.
loved the idea, you know, and, to see the thing unfolding in front of your eyes. I don't know why.
So you
Well,
didn't
there is-
actually
no,
own one?
There is, no, I never owned one.
Oh, okay.
I specified them for a project and said, don't open them until I come. I wanted to see it myself. But I don't know why they don't make it. There's what used to be called a beanbag chair, but that was different. That was fabric or leather stuffed with stuffing, and that is still around. Well, if you have no other questions, I will stick around while you, I think I can speak for Jane. She's inviting you to have some goodies and look around, and I will be happy to answer any questions if you have any more. Thank you for being such a good audience. Thank you.